Good evening. It's Monday, the 29th of June, 2020. It's 8 p.m. Welcome to episode 3 of Bees Bulletin Live. And what a remarkable 10 days it has been for Bees fans. At least some of the pain and frustration of not being able to watch the boys on TV, or having to watch the boys on TV rather than in the stands, has been offset first by our 2-0 win against Fulham, followed up last Friday with that fantastic 1-0 win against West Brom, with Ollie Watkins giving us the 3 points after 16 minutes. Brentford sending out the clearest message of intent for the remaining games. It's Reading next at the Majeski Stadium tomorrow evening, an unusual kickoff time. Remember, set your alarms, set your reminders, 6 p.m. tomorrow. So much to talk about, so much to enjoy, and so much to look forward to, and to talk it all over. We have the iFollow Matchday commentators, Mark Burridge and Mick CABBLE, Brentford legend Marcus GAYLE. We're hoping to be joined by a specialist who has very kindly offered his time, Brentford chairman Cliff Crown. We're having a few technical difficulties with him, which we're hoping to solve, and hope Cliff can join us later. We will be honoured and delighted to have him with us. The whole point of Bees Bulletin Live is to give you a chance to have your say. Do post your messages, your questions and your comments on Facebook and YouTube chat. We'll get to as many of them as we can during the course of the show. Let's go around the panel first of all and get your thoughts on the two games that we played so far. Starting with you, Marcus. 2 games, 6 points from 6. We couldn't have hoped for a better start.
It's a brilliant restart, I've got to say. Perfect in all ways and shapes. Clean sheets. I got the goals to win the match. Pontus Janssen back in the side. We're scoring goals, so we need to just back this up tomorrow and make those 2 victories count tomorrow by another performance like that.
Mark, West Brom was always going to be a tricky one. We made, especially in the first half, we made it look surprisingly easy. Was that because we were particularly good, or West Brom was slightly off the pace and slightly off the mark?
Oh, something I've noticed in the 2 games is obviously with the hydration break that we have now, it's almost like 4 quarters, and we've been very strong in the second quarter and the fourth quarter, if you like. So I thought we were very good going into the break. West Brom changed it a bit coming out into the start of the second half. We were under pressure, but once we made the changes, we looked more than comfortable again, and probably went nearest with Josh De Silva to getting a second to make the game safe. But they saw it out well. Immense performances from the whole team, but I think particular mentions for Ethan Pinnock, who's just been a wonderful signing for us, and Rico Henry was superb as well. Ollie Watkins didn't stop running. Yeah, we've just got a solid team all round. We've got a solid squad, so lots to look forward to in the running still, and we're all very excited, of course, about tomorrow night.
And Mick, you weren't at the Fulham game; you were at the West Brom game. So you've had your first experience of football or Brentford behind closed doors, which I imagine feels very different to the one that we've had in the last 2 games watching on Sky, because we do have that canned cheering, which, as Mark predicted, having watched the Bundesliga before the restart, it's amazing how quickly you get used to that. Obviously, it's not quite the same, but it's maybe you quite quickly get used to it not being as weird as you thought it would be. You were in the stadium on Friday. How did it feel to you in terms of just the atmosphere there and just the sort of the initial shock of empty stands and the sounds of the players and the ball being kicked echoing around Griffin Park?
Very surreal, Stu. It was very low key. The players kind of came out. I have to say, Peter Gillen was fantastic. He was kind of represented the 10,000 that wasn't there. He really kind of encapsulated what it could be. So Peter did what Peter does so well. But you have to say that what impressed me about Brentford was the intensity that they play in the technical level. Because if anything, you could have thought, and you've seen it in a couple of Premier League games where not a lot happens and it's a little bit slow and it's a little bit kind of cagey. But Brentford have been right at it from the off. And the both games, you know, Fulham and West Brom are very high level technical ability teams. And Brentford have not only kind of mastered them, but, you know, against West Brom in the first half, they were dominant in the. And the one thing that's impressed me is that they were clinical. They passed the ball well, and we looked in both games like a threat going forward. You could give Fulham the ball in the first half. You could give West Brom, even in that what Mark would call the third quarter, the first bit of the second half. But what was most impressive was, as Pontus Jansson said in his interview today, 2 shots in 2 games. Now that's remarkable. 1 hit the bar and they had a very good chance, Fulham, but 2 chances in 3 hours of football against the top team and the third place team as they were then is remarkable and a great start.
Marcus, have you been surprised at just how strongly we've come out? Because we didn't know quite what to expect after such a long layoff, which Brentford we were going to see. The thing that's been quite striking is the fitness levels are there, the intensity is there, the enthusiasm is there, and in some ways we barely put a foot wrong. And after 100+ days away, there's no signs of rustiness there at all.
No, there's not. And I'm very impressed with the fitness levels, especially the Fulham game, scoring those late goals. It proves how fit the boys are. And that's all down to the coaching staff and the players in terms of the trust they've got between the two. The players keeping themselves as fit as possible in that break and coming back and hitting the ground on full throttle. It's been a pleasure to watch both games like that. Hopefully we don't blow out a team, but we can just keep on chalking up the wins, the performances, getting the right results, and hopefully in 9 games or 7 games time, we can be where we want to be.
Plenty to talk about as a result of the press conference that Pontus Jansson gave this afternoon. One person we're delighted to have back, both for his defensive skills and for his role as the leader of the squad. And I thought Pontus made some really interesting comments in his pre-Reading press conference earlier today. Let's just have a quick listen to a few of the things he had to say this afternoon.
I used to be the one always in the spotlight, and I was looking for and searching for being in the spotlight. But now I don't even care about that anymore. Like before, I was always like analyzing my own performances and see like what can I do better. But now instead of that, I'm more looking at like the collective teamwork and how we defend as a group and as a team, and have a tight dialogue with the defensive coach we have here. And absolutely no problem to have like my partner Ethan Pinnock getting all the spotlights because he's absolutely beast and a fantastic player. So for me, it's just nice. I'm just happy that he's getting all this praise and all these positive words. I don't of course, I mean, it's nice to hear that people say that you're good, but for me, it's more important that people talking about Brentford, such a solid unit and we defend well. This is things that I can take credit of instead. My first 2 seasons, I was like looking to get booked every game. Like I wanted to have a fight with the player, with like a dialogue with the referee and those silly, stupid things. And I don't know this, but yeah, I think like I learned a lot last year with Marcelo, and now here I'm captain and I'm older and more experienced. I think I learned, and I'm a father now of a little girl, so I have to set the statement and be a good father as well. So yeah, I think this comes with the age and with the experience, and I think this is a better version of Pontus.
And that's the quote that jumped to me, Marcus, a better version of Pontus. Yeah. Obviously, as he says there, it's a process that started under Bielsa when he was at Leeds, and he's taken to the next level under Thomas Frank at Brentford. You do get a strong sense there of how much he feels that even though when he joined us, we saw him as a potential leader, he feels that he has matured. Some of the silly stuff that maybe he was guilty of earlier in his career, he just hasn't got time for. His priorities are different, and his priorities are not just about himself anymore.
I think the most important thing for me that he mentioned is that he became a father this season as well, and I think that adds to your sort of maturity of responsibility off the field, and it's probably made him feel more responsible on the field because he has that composure about him. He's not getting into rocks as he said he used to get into, and he's dealing with every situation with a smile on his face now, and he's leading the boys in a brilliant way. He's got a great deputy in Ethan Pinnock there alongside him, but the whole back four, in fact the whole 11 that starts out there is a credit to what's going on at the moment. So he needs those supporters from his teammates in terms of allowing him to be who he needs to be, and it's reflected by the performances as we're getting.
we're going to spend some time talking about Pontus Jensen and his role, partly because he's been away so long, partly because he's such a pivotal figure for us, and partly because he had such interesting things to say today. So do have your say as well. You can put your messages on Facebook and YouTube chat about what you think about what Pontus has had to say and the difference that he's made since he's been back in the squad. And we'll read out and discuss as many of those as possible. Mark, as we said there, striking that he feels his leadership role has grown and matured since he's been at the club.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember his interview live on Sky last season after we drew with them 1-1. He used some choice language, which he knows he shouldn't have done, complaining about the referee. And obviously, as a non-Brentford player, my impression of him was possibly the same as many. He's a good player, but he's temperamental, and he'd always be problematic. So when I heard we might be signing him, which was very late, I heard rumours that when we played AFC Wimbledon in a game a couple of at the start of the season, and I thought, I'm not so sure he'd fit in with us, but how wrong can you be? But he has matured. I think possibly the club should take some benefit as well from that. As you said, he's become a father. That's been one thing, but he's working in an environment which he naturally feels very, very comfortable. He's grown up himself, and there's no doubt, however he plays, having his presence on the pitch is a real calming influence on a young team. And I think he's a calming influence on the fans as well. I did mention this before, so sort of apologies for repeating myself, but the fans who went up to Middlesbrough for the first away game of the season saw what he's all about. At the time we were under pressure just before half-time, he was calming everything down. He was saying to his teammates, don't worry, it's going to be okay. We'll stay in this game. We're under pressure, but we're going to be okay. And I hadn't seen that for a long, long time. And yeah, he's been brilliant this season. We know what the record is when he's there. The fact he's now back, hopefully for the run-in playoffs if needed. Let's hope we get automatic promotion. But he's great having him back, and he'll be a huge boost to us.
Mick, the time before lockdown and before the season was temporarily paused seems like a lifetime ago. But if you can cast your mind back not only to the time before lockdown, but to the start of the season when Pontus joined us, did you share any of those niggling concerns or worries that Mark has alluded to, that maybe he wasn't the right fit for the club? We know Thomas's famous no dickheads rule, and I'm not for a moment suggesting that he is, but given his disciplinary reputation, his reputation as a forceful character, did you have any concerns that he might not be a good fit for us?
No, I didn't actually, because you look at how Brentford manage players, and let's use a couple of examples. Scott Hogan, Ryan Woods come to mind immediately, where they just fitted Brentford. And you don't know why they fitted Brentford, but there's something in the ethos that they actually fitted the mould and the system that we have. And Pontus is the guy that we've been looking for. I'll go back a couple of seasons under Dean Smith's reign, where the captaincy changed every week because, it really wasn't that important. That's how Brentford looked at it. But what we may have not needed a captain, but what you did need was you needed an experienced figure for young players to look up to. And the key that Pontus has given, as Mark has said, is that when people look around, they want to see people that are at the top of their game. He's a Swedish international. He's played many times for Sweden. He's played in big games. He's played in big games for Leeds United. He's played in the playoffs. He knows what's required. He's been on the wrong side of what Leeds were comfortably up against Derby last year, and it imploded in the playoffs. He knows all the pitfalls that are there. One thing that Pontus said in the conference today was this team doesn't seem to have any fear or any nerves about the prize that's at stake. He's that calming influence that we've needed, and it's no coincidence that when Jansen isn't in the side, we don't seem as rock-like as we do when he is in the side. He may not be the most effective defender in that Ethan Pinnock is winning all the plaudits, but Pinnock is a better defender when he's got Pontus next to him.
Do join us if you're watching. Have your say on Facebook chat and YouTube chat about what you think about the role that Pontus has played when he's been with us so far, and the role that he will continue to play in the next 7 matches. One quote that it made me laugh when I heard it. Pontus said in his press conference this afternoon, "I think the younger players in this squad don't understand how big it is." He's talking about possible promotion to the Premier League. "We should keep it like that. Just tell them to go out on the pitch and do what they're good at. I think that's enough." Marcus, is it really possible that even the youngest player in the squad doesn't know what the next 7 games are going to mean and what's at stake here?
It's possible that that's the case. I think that's a good thing as well. Imagine if they woke up and found out how important, where Brentford are right now. They may become a bit more anxious, a bit more nervous, and clam up a bit. I think at the moment, everyone's playing with a smile on their face. They're enjoying playing and experiencing what's going on at the moment. So hopefully it just continues like that. I'm sure as the games become less, the tensions are going to creep up there, and we'll soon find out over the next 7 games.
Yeah, and Mark, that was going to be my next question. That Marcus says everyone's playing with a smile on their face. I think probably for the first few games there's a honeymoon period. We're glad that football's back. The boys are glad that there's football to play. But with 2 great results, the pressure is going to grow. I noticed, in the coverage of Brentford in the last few days, you always know, and it's happened a couple of times this season already. You always know when we're on a good run, because the national press, who largely ignore Brentford, start turning up in the press room. Obviously, they can't do that at the moment, but just writing about Brentford. Do you think that playing with a smile on your face can continue for the next 7 matches? Can we stay calm enough to keep enjoying it, to keep focusing on what we do, or do you think as the games go on, the pressure's just naturally going to start to seep into the dressing room?
Well, that's Thomas Frank. I mean, you look at Thomas Frank. What's your manager like? He comes over as a very cool man, one you desperately want to like. He's I think when he was under pressure last year, he as I mentioned it before, that Bolton game, he came out. The crowd really wanted him to do well, because he is first and foremost, he's a nice man. He's a nice human being, and he does represent what Brentford's all about. So particularly wanted him to do well. Can he and Brian and Kevin and Pontus, of course, keep the players focused, keep them relaxed? Winning surely helps you keep a smile on your face. It's the complete opposite of obviously when you're in a relegation struggle. So to me, it's all about results. We've got a tough ask, of course, if we're going for 2nd place, which is now very much a possibility, having half the deficit. So I think it's all down to results. And if we can maintain this pressure, it's a big game tomorrow, because obviously it's 3rd against 15th, and this is a game Brentford fans will associate that we don't always turn up, and we certainly didn't in this fixture last year when we were 2 down in 15 minutes, and it was a very lackluster display the whole afternoon. It's a big week coming up. Of course, Sheffield Wednesday playing West Bromwich Albion on Wednesday. In fact, West Bromwich Albion's games are always either behind us or at the same time as us. So we've always got an advantage to try and put pressure on them. If we win tomorrow, let's see what happens at Hillsborough. And if we could come out at the weekend having cut down the lead again, then that's going to be very difficult for West Bromwich Albion. They are a quality team, and once they start winning, my theory is they will maintain that until the end of the season, with possibly one or two drop points. But we need favours, of course, but we can only do what we can do, and that's to keep winning our games. And tomorrow I expect it to be quite a tight affair, and I think we will come out on top.
Plenty more discussion about the Reading game, and a chance for you to have your say about your expectations and hopes for the game tomorrow in due course. Mick, I just want to ask you, do you think it'll be any easier or harder for the boys to stay calm and maintain their composure, given that the games are being played? behind closed doors, because the one thing we won't have, either playing home or away, is that roar of the crowd. Do you think it will be any easier to ignore those distractions, ignore that natural atmosphere that you pick up on, be it positive or negative, given that there won't be a crowd in the stadium for the games ahead?
It's an interesting one, Stuart, because, you know, as you get towards the tail end of the season, we see it every season with teams going for promotion, is that you can turn up on a home banker and the side, just for no reason at all, just doesn't play to what they were a couple of months ago. The really good fact about this is Brentford, since the post-lockdown, have just come out all cylinders fired up, and you know, you're just looking at it that they are just playing at a level which is the most important thing, is that we played the side that is third and the side that is top. It gives you a kind of yardstick of where they are, so they can fall off them levels. There's no doubt about that. Is that they may not play as well as against Reading as they have done in the first two games. That happens. They're young players, and fatigue can set in this kind of, we say, cycle of Saturday, Tuesday, or here we're going Friday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday. So, you know, levels are going to be difficult to maintain, and that's where the squad comes in. But the difference is that they're a young side and they're together. You know, we looked at it and West Brom were very talented. You know, Sawyers, Pereira, excellent players. You have to say that Sawyers and Pereira you'd want in any championship team. But the difference is Brentford are a team. They seemed all 11 were together, whereas West Brom had, I think BURRIDGE would say he had 4 or 5 that weren't quite at it on Friday. And that's the difference. In tight games, Brentford only need to perform for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And what they've shown in the first two games is they're clinical. They went one up against Fulham. There was no hanging on. It was going to get the second one. And in the last quarter against the West Brom, once we made the substitutions of Brian Mbeumo coming on and Baptiste, all of a sudden you saw Brentford take the ascendancy, and the game management, you have to say, with 6 minutes added on time, although we were all kind of quite conscious of these 6 extra minutes, you have to say that Brentford managed them superbly.
Mick, I've got to say, you mentioned clinical there. How many times have I listened to you and Mark on a Saturday afternoon in seasons gone by, and you've said time and time again, we're just not clinical enough. We're just not clinical enough. And yet this season, you're saying the absolute opposite.
Exactly, and that's the difference between a side that's looking for promotion. That's the side. If you were really kind of analysing the first 16 minutes of the West Brom game, West Brom settled quicker. They passed the ball, they were quicker in the tackle, they were winning the 50-50s. The difference was Brentford looked a threat on the attack, especially down the left-hand side. Rico Henry was fantastic, and Ben Rama flitted in and out. And once they did, and Josh De Silva with the run, they created mayhem for West Brom. Yeah, West Brom had 4 people back trying to defend, and it all went through the legs. But Ollie Watkins was there, and it was one chance, goal. And as soon as you got Brentford in front, then all of a sudden it's a different game. And Mark and I were talking in the commentary, it was about taking the game deep. And what Thomas Frank was doing, there was a period in the second half where I think everybody that was watching was a little bit kind of, do we need to make changes? Did we need to do this, or do we need to do something? But what we did was, once we got to 67 minutes and made them changes, we took the game deep to 80 minutes. We had West Brom on the back foot, and it's just their management of the tactics. Brentford are thinking cuter. We've always done it in the transfer market. Now we're doing it on the field.
Marcus, talk to me a little bit more about that togetherness that Mick mentions, because before the game on Friday, we saw that Be Together video, which you play a part in, along with many other members and staff and fans of the club there. It does seem to be something that has been embedded right at the heart of the club now. That togetherness isn't just a PR slogan or a hashtag. Mm-hmm. It's something that all of the players feel. And I think what struck me most about Pontus talking about togetherness was that if a big character like Pontus Jansson can say he's prepared to put his own needs or his own desires second for the good of the team, it suggests that sense of togetherness is something that runs really deep in the club now.
Yeah, as you said, it's running really deep in the club. The players are the sort of embodiment of that, because we see their performances week in, week out, and that's what they're showing, and it's getting the right results. It's showing that there is a unique bond out there, having a magnificent season on and off the field. The club's working very hard behind the scenes to make this more inclusive for everybody, fans included, obviously. And it's working. It's going in the right direction. There's a lot of different conversations that are taking place, which is great. But I think fundamentally, the club is gelled by what they see on that pitch on a Saturday or Tuesday fixture. So it's very important that the team keeps doing what they're doing. And it's just not a slogan. It's a real event that's going on throughout the club.
Cliff, I know, is still trying to join us. Cliff Crown, the club chairman, still having some technical problems. I don't know whether any of you boys have his phone number to hand, but if we can't get him up in vision, we'll just dial him up and call him on the phone, and we'll hear his voice even if we can't see his face. If anybody has his number to hand, or if Cliff, don't call me because I'm using the phone to do the live show, so there will cause all sorts of confusion. But if Cliff, if you're listening, if you want to call Mick, Mark, or Marcus, and we'd love to hear you. We have questions for you, or maybe we can call you. So at least you're I've trailed you so hard. You were the star of the show that we want to get you on, and there's plenty of time to talk. So let's try and get you up on the phone instead. Let's move to Reading, currently 15th in the league on 49 points. They drew 1-1 against Stoke in their first match after the restart. Then lost 2-1 against Derby County with a fractious end to the game with 2 red cards at the final whistle. Pontus Jansson in his press conference this afternoon had some words about that game, and here's what Pontus Jansson had to say about the game ahead.
After Fulham, of course, when we won, we said, like, of course, now we'll just be stupid if we don't look for top 2. And after West Bromwich, of course, then there's a bigger reason to look for it. But we had a discussion after the Fulham game to say, like, I don't know if you heard it before, but to win nine straight games in Championship is very tough. Probably there's not a lot of teams that can do it. But you can always win your next game, which is a possibility. So we are probably going to be the favorite in every game from now on. So, yeah, why can't we just then go out and win every game? Of course, it will be tough, but that's something we have to aim for. Reading on Tuesday, tomorrow will be very tough, but, I mean, we can win it, so why can't we do it? That's just the mantra we have to go out and win the next game and then see how far we can come with that.
Mick, you in the last show had some concerns that Reading might be the banana skin game. You thought that it might be the one that catches us off guard. Do you still stand by that, or do you think, given the performance in the first 2 games, are you a bit more confident about it now?
I think you have to be wary, Stu, just purely because everybody looks, especially outside the club, and say, well, they've beaten Fulham away and they've beaten West Brom at home. What could possibly go wrong? And football isn't like that. You have to turn up and you have to perform at a certain level. If Brentford play anywhere near the levels that they played Friday week and last Friday, against Fulham and against West Brom, then they should comfortably get past Reading. However, there are no gimmies in the Championship. You know, it's an old cliche, but if you play anything below 7 out of 10, it doesn't matter. You'll get Luton away. That's what happens. Now, that's far from it. I think the momentum that Brentford have got since Fulham and West Brom is worth an extra point to us. It's like the goal difference. It's just given all the supporters a buzz. I still think Pontus is absolutely right. I think 7 out of 7 is a really tough call. 9 out of 9 is like unheard of. But the difference is, I go back to 91-92 season. We won 6 out of the last 6. I was there at Reading away and a 0-0 draw on April Fool's Day. And the actual side was, we were actually there. And the Brentford crowd were like, oh, what a performance. And then we win 6 out of 6. It can be done. The difference is that this team is playing at such a good level. As long as they maintain the consistencies, and as Marcus said, we need a little bit of luck. You need things to go your way, that deflection not to go in. You don't need somebody. Christian Norgard got a yellow card on Friday night against West Brom that didn't look like a yellow card. Norgard was furious about it. You get that when somebody's on a yellow and it's a second yellow, the whole complexion of the game changes. So those little things over the next 7 games have got to go with us. Everything has to go our way, plus West Brom having a wobble. They had a wobble on Friday, and looking at Bulletin's post-match conference, you wondered how much it's taken out of them, and he is a worried man. Pressure does funny things to teams, and at the moment I thought it was a good thing from Pontus to say that the team don't really realise what's at stake here. They probably do, and he's downplaying it a bit. But young players don't have any fear. And if they play with no fear, then tomorrow shouldn't be the banana skin that some people fear.
And what do you think are the biggest fears, Marcus, for tomorrow? What are the concerns if you were to identify the things that could be our undoing at the Majeski Stadium tomorrow night? What would you put to?
I think the first thing is probably how we approach the game. If we get over complacent and just think this is going to be a stroll against Reading, I think that would be a big mistake. Mick mentioned pressure as well. I think as the games go on, the pressures are going to be slightly different, and the players have to adjust to that as well. We're going to be favourites, as Pontus says. We're going to be favourites going into every game. Now that is a totally different pressure Brentford's never had before, and it's about how they deal with their emotions through that and deal with the sort of, as I said, the outside pressures that they cannot control going into these matches. So tomorrow, it's all about how we approach it, try and get the job done in a very organised, professional manner, limit the chances as we've done in the first two games. If we can continue to do that, we'll end up winning the game.
Look who's joined us.
Good evening.
Cliff Crown.
Sorry about that.
Brentford chairman, we can do the post-match analysis as to what went wrong. I'm very glad to see you, Cliff, not least because I had 4 pieces of paper with questions for you, and we were going to have quite a short show, but I'm delighted you're here, ladies and gentlemen. Cliff Crown, Brentford chairman, welcome to B's Bulletin. It's a delight that you're here. It's a relief that you're here, but you are here. And welcome. We've covered a lot of ground already, but let's backtrack a little. And now's your chance. Now that we know Cliff is here, it's a chance for you to put your questions to Brentford chairman Cliff Crown. I've got a couple of questions already. Now you know that he's here in Envision. Tell your friends, text them. Let's double our viewing because the person you all wanted to watch in the first place, it wasn't me. It's not Mick, Marcus, and Mark. It's Cliff Crown. So, Cliff, first of all, your reflections on the 2 games so far.
Obviously delighted with the results, delighted with the performance, really taken by the way in which the team have approached the 2 matches under the guidance of Thomas, Brian, Kevin and everybody else. To be fair, it was what I hoped for and dreamt of, but didn't necessarily expect. So delighted that we've made a very, very strong start. And a lot of the other games, the results went our way. But it counts for nothing if we don't do it at Reading tomorrow night and home to Wigan and Charlton and all the other games. So it's 2 down, 7 to go. And we just have to be at the top of our game in every match and just see where it takes us.
And give us some sense from the inside. I'm not expecting you to betray any confidences, but I can't imagine you spent the 3 months that we weren't playing sitting in the garden watering the roses. What was going on? What was the rhythm of the club during the height of lockdown? Because so many uncertainties, so many questions. What was going on at Jersey Road and Griffin Park during that period?
Well, obviously not too much was going on at Jersey Road until they were allowed to come back. So there were lots of texts and lots of messaging and speaking to players to give them routines and hope that they could keep in shape. And I know Thomas and the guys were very pleased with the way the players came back from a fitness perspective. So that was good. So Jersey Road was pretty quiet. There were obviously 1 or 2 people came in, particularly for Sergi and Nikos for the injuries. But other than that, in terms of the club offices, they also had to shut for obvious reasons. So we've all been working from home, and the number 1 priority was protecting the club, which meant looking at the cash flow forecasts and limiting the amount of outflow of cash, of which the players did us proud in agreeing deferrals. The staff have also done us proud in also taking salary deferrals / cuts to be able to keep everything moving along in the right direction. And at least we are able now to see some light at the end of the tunnel. and I think there is a reasonable chance that we will have a percentage of fans in the stadia for the new season.
A lot more to discuss, and that's one of the questions I was going to ask you that obviously a lot of fans are asking. Did you think at any point that the season would be abandoned? Because we wanted the season to be completed, not least because of our position in the league and so much to play for. But given the complications and the uncertainty around that situation, especially when lockdown was first announced and it seemed to go on forever, obviously things are starting to loosen up a little bit now. But did you have serious discussions at any point about the possibility or the likelihood of the season not being completed?
It was obviously something that we were aware of that could happen. There was a lot of communication between the Football League, the EFL, and the clubs. They've been sending us letters following board meetings twice a week. There've been numerous calls with club representatives to talk about it. But the reality is there was so much uncertainty that nobody could be sure what was going to happen. And I think as time went on, it became clearer that Leagues 1 and 2 were really going to find it incredibly difficult to continue their seasons, but that the Championship had a real prospect of being able to do so. And obviously we're delighted that that has turned out that way.
I've got plenty of questions for you, but I want to bring in Mick, Mark and Marcus. Have you got any questions for Cliff immediately about now that we have him here? Any burning questions for Cliff that you'd like to raise before I continue, and also bring in some of our viewers who are also asking questions?
Well, I'll ask Cliff from the fans. A lot of people are saying to me is that detailed kind of it's very sketchy with COVID and everything like this, Cliff. It's really difficult to put timelines on things with government advice. But if we were looking at the new stadium, and you mentioned a percentage of fans, is there anything that you can kind of give as a kind of formulation of a plan, or something that's in the kind of shall we say embryonic stage that you can give to the fans tonight as almost like a feeder into Lionel Road? Will we start the new season in Lionel Road, and that's the kind of thing? Is everything on course to start the new season?
Yes, I think that we should be starting the new season whenever that might be in the new stadium. I'm very confident that that will be the case. In terms of the fans in the stadium, I know that the EFL, alongside the Premier League and a number of other sports bodies, are talking to the government as part of a working party to work out how we might be able to get a percentage of fans into stadia from September. And you only have to look at what's happened in other countries to see how fans are slowly beginning to come back. I think fans may well be in stadia in Denmark on I think the 8th of July. There are fans coming into other stadia already, and that will increase over the coming 4 to 6 weeks. But I think realistically, we have to wait and see what happens. Obviously, everybody's concerned about a second wave. And so whilst there's lots of talking, I suspect no decisions will be made much before the sort of early part of August. So I think it is, like all of this has been throughout the whole period, a wait and see. But I know that people are talking about it and really pushing for fans in stadia, because it's what we all want to. There's one thing COVID has taught us: football is not football without the fans. It's just not the same experience by any stretch. And
it's better than nothing, though. I will say it's better than nothing. But, but Cliff, you know, as a businessman, you know, I'm sure for any given situation, whether it's a deal, whether it's a purchasing a player, you've got a plan A, B, and C. But at the moment, do you have to have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, and G? Because you know the possible scenarios are so varied that you can't limit your options, because everything is possible.
Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't say we have 5 plans. We have one basic plan, but there are more variables to that plan this season probably than there's ever been. and we just take that into account. We do sensitivity analysis when we're looking at forecasts, and we keep on top of where we are, where we want to be financially, because that's obviously the most important thing to do, both for the club and for any other business. You have to be on top of the numbers and know where you're going, and then plug in the numbers as and when something becomes clearer. But it's very difficult because, as you say, there's a lot of uncertainty. If you'd asked me 6 weeks ago, I'd have said no fans in stadia before January at the earliest. And in 6 weeks, I'm now much more confident that we'll have fans in the stadia from the beginning of September. But that might change. You know, we may have a second wave in a few weeks' time, and the government may say, sorry, that's off the table.
And I wouldn't expect you to give any hard and fast predictions, but how could you see that having some fans, a percentage of fans, could work in reality? Are we talking 10%? Are we talking 25%? And how obviously there's going to be, with a small number of fans, if it's possible, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people as well. So what's your best case prediction of how it could work? I'm not talking about exact numbers, but just the mechanism of getting fans into a stadium on a match day, given that the COVID-19 hasn't gone away completely and could come back.
Yeah, and that's something we're obviously looking at right now, as are lots of other people within the football and in general sport businesses and various different sectors, to see how it could work. It's obvious that if you had, for example, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 fans in a 17,000 seater stadium, that you could socially distance. Certainly, if it was 1 meter. So actually being inside the stadium is probably not that big a challenge. It's about getting there and getting in there, and how do you make sure that people can socially distance on their way in and on their way out. Obviously, there'll be challenges around catering, and that's something we'll have to look at. But fundamentally, it's the problem with lots of people on trains, and then the narrow entrances to the stadia. And those are all things that everybody is looking at, because most stadia are different, and we'll come up with a plan which we'll be able to share with everybody once we know that we can do it. At the moment, we can't. So it's just something we're working on in the background.
One thing I almost forgot in the excitement of seeing you on the screen there is we're used to seeing you in the director's box on a Saturday wearing your suit and tie, but I want to just bring up a picture that I think Mark, this is, I think you took this picture, didn't you, Mark?
Yeah, I did. Sneakily.
If you can see right in the middle of that picture there, resplendent in the blue jersey at Craven Cottage, at full time, clapping away is Mr. Cliff Crown, Mr. Chairman. It was dressed down Saturday by the looks of things. Cliff, you decided to don your commemorative blue shirt for the afternoon.
I was wearing the special commemorative shirt underneath the short sleeve shirt that I was wearing, and I did the same, in fact, on Friday night. We talked about the need for people to dress up, and obviously, as you say, I'm used to going to football. It's the only day of the week I ever put a suit on. I normally go to work in jeans or shorts in the summer. So Saturday is dress up day for me, and I haven't worn a shirt. I haven't put a suit on for nearly 3.5, 4 months, and we felt that there was no need with so few people, and we weren't in the boardroom hosting the West Brom directors, and the Fulham directors weren't hosting us. We had separate entrances, separate exits, so there was no real opportunity to have any camaraderie with the opposing directors, and so we all agreed that casual wear would be fine. So that's how it's going to be for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like there's anyone there that you need to impress, is there?
No, certainly not.
Cliff, can I ask about Griffin Park? I know a lot of my friends have asked me you know, is there a chance or any kind of plan for people to say goodbye to Griffin Park? You know, and again, it's down to the government, and we perfectly understand that. But have the club got anything up their sleeve that people can finally say something to Griffin Park and say their goodbyes?
Obviously, we've got nothing concrete at the moment because there isn't any opportunity for us to do it. But we're well aware of the desire of the fans to say goodbye. We're desperate for the fans to come and say goodbye, and we have to wait and see what the government will allow. And as soon as we know what is doable, what is allowable, then we will have a plan ready to be able to adopt and put into action if at all possible. But there are so many, again, it's just another example of uncertainty that we face, that we can't make any cast iron decisions, we can't make any promises. But we know what the fans want. We know what we want for the fans. And I can only assure everybody that we will do whatever we possibly can to give them that opportunity.
Cliff,
Mark,
Cliff.
you've been... Oh, sorry, Mark. Over to you, Mark.
Sorry, Cliff. I was just going to ask, I don't know, maybe it does come too soon. Should Brentford take part in the playoffs this season? Do you think for the Championship there's any remote possibility of just a few fans being let into enormous Wembley Stadium?
Well, I'd like to think it's a possibility. The playoff final is, I think, 4 days after the FA Cup final. And clearly, if a decision were to allow people to come to Wembley for the FA Cup final, we would expect to be able to have a similar number of people come to the playoff final. But at this stage, I just don't know the answer to that.
Marcus, you've been unusually quiet. A chance for you to put your questions to Mr. Chairman.
I'm always quiet, but good to see our chairman. Good to see you, Cliff.
And you, Marcus.
I just want to thank you on behalf of everybody as well, like the sterling work that you're doing as chairman and as a club as well. And we need to show that a sort of appreciation of keeping the club running through this traumatic time for everybody, because it must be so difficult just adapting to everything as we go along through the government advice and stuff. And that's all I want to really say. I haven't got any questions for you. As such.
I'll give you a question.
One question.
Go for it.
Are you going to wear the away shirt tomorrow at Reading? Is that going to be?
Are we playing in the away shirt, the black and yellow?
I'm not too sure.
Oh, well, that's the one I'll be wearing.
We'll have to
I think I haven't seen any. Normally, the club announces in advance when you're going to be wearing the blue shirt. So I assume you will be in the black and yellow.
Then so will I. And thank you, Marcus, for your thank you. It's been a huge team effort. You know, everybody associated with the club has really pulled together. We've shown how we are strong together. It just so happens that this is the 7th anniversary of my appointment as chairman. And I'm extremely proud of the way in which everybody at the club has reacted to these incredible, difficult times. And I'm just glad that we've got all the excitement of the next 7, maybe 10 games to come.
We were talking about togetherness and the Be Together slogan, and how Marcus was in particular saying that it is more than a slogan, and how deeply it runs through the club. And in some ways, it's easier for a highly paid athlete, a highly focused athlete, for the board to stay focused, because that's what you're paid to do. But obviously, there are people at all levels of the club, from the highest paid to the lowest paid, who have been through a tough time. Do you think that philosophy that starts on the pitch, that philosophy of togetherness, has helped you as a wider club and as a wider family to get through the last few months?
Without a doubt, Stuart. It really runs through our DNA, and we have used the concept of togetherness for quite some time now, alongside other concepts that we believe in, and it's so ingrained within the club that whether you are on the pitch or off the pitch, everybody knows what we're about, and everybody lives and breathes our beliefs of how we want to be as a football club. And actually, it's very nice to hear many people say what a great football club we are and how well we're run. And that's actually, it's very rewarding to know that people are appreciative and noticing the way in which Brentford runs, and something that many, I think, clubs would like to emulate.
What's been the hardest thing for you as a club? And I'm not talking necessarily about the logistics of getting the games going, but just the hardest thing for you as a club more generally about the last few months, because presumably you've had to furlough staff, you've had to make some difficult decisions. You've alluded several times to the difficulty of making long-term plans even now. Were there any moments in the last few months where you've just had your head in your hands and said, "Oh my God, how are we going to get through this"?
No, I can honestly say I haven't had that moment, and don't expect to. What we did as part and parcel of what I believe to be a well-run business is we acted very quickly. And as everybody knows, the biggest expense in a football club is players' wages. And so we spoke to the players, and to a man, they were completely on side with the opportunity to help the club by deferring their salaries. And that was put into effect very, very quickly, which meant that we could breathe initially. We then obviously looked at all of the other areas of the business as to where we could save money, reduce money going out of the door to help cash flow, and we're in reasonable shape considering the circumstances. And now, as we're coming out of lockdown and we're playing football again, those decisions have borne fruit big time, because we are in a good place and we can capitalise on that as we move forward.
A couple of questions coming in from our viewers, probably similar questions to the ones that we're asking. The first one from Malcolm saying, Cliff, can you talk a little bit about the financial side? I wouldn't expect you to open up your balance sheet here, but we have been and are so reliant on the transfer market. What impact has the last few months and the next few months going to have on that side of things, our basic business model?
Yeah, it may well have some impact. Obviously, a lot depends on where we end up at the end of the season, and nobody really knows what that impact will be. We've seen Chelsea already spend big money. We've seen, I think, Juventus talking about buying a Barcelona midfield player for 72 million. So it's too early to say whether there will be a negative impact. But I think if players were to leave, they're very, very good players. So I don't see that as being a significant impact on our model. But we'll have to wait and see. Certainly the early indications are all quite positive, and hopefully if we can get promoted to the Premier League, then it takes care of itself.
Another question for you, Cliff, from Jim Levac. The unity between directors and players very evident on Friday night. Do you think that togetherness will give you an edge in the run-in? Do you think you are, the psychological side will help you where it may not be something that other clubs have to draw on?
I think the togetherness between the directors, the players, and the coaching staff, we've already benefited from that enormously, based on what I said earlier. So this is just an ongoing way in which we operate. I saw a few of the players as we came out of the car park before the game on Friday night, and chatting to them, and they're in very good spirits. We have a very, very good relationship with Thomas, Brian, and Kevin. Before lockdown, we would go out for dinner every 6 to 8 weeks. Three members from the board, John Varney and them, and chat about the club and football, and various other matters. And that's something I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. And it helps create that warm relationship which we have. I'm not sure it's going to make a huge difference, particularly in the run-in, but it has made a difference in terms of the way we are as a club and the togetherness that we believe in, and is evident for everybody to see.
One question that was posted on Facebook before the show, so I'll put it to you. I can't bring it up on the screen, but from Ian Blackham, who says, it's a simple, but it's a pretty fundamental question. When do you think the new season may start? I guess it's like so many things you've said this afternoon. Is just we just don't know.
No, we don't. My best guess it will either be before or after the international break. So youth have already decided that there will be an international break on the weekend of the 5th of September. And so we might possibly start the season the week before that, or we might not start the season until the week after that. And then who knows what's going to happen vis-a-vis COVID and second outbreaks and all of that. But if you assume that everything is continuing in a good path, with less and less people being infected, and no pressure on the hospitals, then I think those are the two most likely starting dates for next season.
More questions from the audience, which we'll come to, but I just want to just pause for a moment and give our panelists a chance to jump in again if they want to. Mick, Mark, Marcus, anything you want to pick up on from what Cliff has said so far?
I just wanted to say it's. I'm sure Cliff is more than aware that the Premier League, which we will hopefully be in, normally starts about a week or two later. Yes.
Again, I think the Premier League will be looking at those dates as well, and they will obviously make their own decision based on their broadcast commitments. I believe they had to make a payment to Sky, a very substantial one, and obviously for them it's really important that they don't have that same problem next season. So, but we're not privy to those conversations.
Mick, anything from you?
Just regarding transfers, Cliff. I mean, what happens with usually players are out of contract on the 30th of June, and one of the things that I think all the league is well aware of is Brentford do their business early. With COVID, has that kind of put things on ice? Is this a thing for all clubs that have been affected? But Brentford traditionally are well ahead of the game with transfers. They really do, work months in advance. Has COVID kind of affected that for planning for next season?
I don't think so. I think the guys, the directors of football, Phil and Raz, and the rest of the team have been working on the potential transfer acquisitions over the last few months. And I think that whilst there is, again, some uncertainty, nevertheless, it's not going to stop us from doing our business as and when we can. And as you say, we'll obviously be looking to do it as early as we possibly can. But I can't really say much more than that because these are, as everybody well knows, unprecedented times.
Let's go back to another question from Charles Payne, who says it's a sort of, in some ways, it's a technical question, but an important one. Yeah. That about the need. You don't just take possession of the keys and walk into a stadium and even under normal times fill it with spectators. There's a whole process to go through. How is that being considered now? The sort of safety certificates and the sign off for the stadium, given the uncertainties that still remain?
Yes, we've obviously been well aware of this issue for quite some time, and we have been planning, working with the safety advisory group and with the local authority, where we have very good relationships there. Alan Walsh and his team at the stadium have done a fantastic job, and I'm sure that we will be able to do what is necessary to get the safety certificate so that we can play in the new stadium.
And one question the one viewer asked are the requirements, without getting too stuck in the weeds, are the requirements, would they still be the same if you were playing behind closed doors as they would be if it was if Lionel Road was full of spectators? Would the process be exactly the same regardless of how things look in a couple of months' time?
I don't think it'd be exactly the same, because you wouldn't have the issue of being able to show how you get 17,000 fans in and out of a stadium, and you may not have some of the catering services at the same levels. So I think it won't be identical, but the principles will be the same, and we will make sure that everything inside the stadium has been tested and is operating sufficiently well to enable us to play our first game in the new stadium at the start of next season.
And we touched on Farewell Griffin Park, the thing that we are all emotional about and thinking about. And I know that you've said that it's difficult at the moment to have any firm plans, but plans are being developed on that score. But Keith McInnes asking the timeline, something even reading these words sends a chill down my spine. Is there a timeline for the dismantling of Griffin Park? We do have to face up to the fact that it will be dismantled. I hope I don't even want to use the word demolished, because it just hurts too much. But it won't be there anymore. So is there a timeline for that side of things, and how much is that affected by what's going on at the moment?
So we don't have to leave Griffin Park until we have the new stadium operational and ready to go. After that, we then have to hand over Griffin Park to Eco World, and what they do with Griffin Park and when they do it is clearly down to them. We have no leverage over that, but clearly if there is time between when we hand over and when they start work at the site, then that might be an opportunity where fans can come and say goodbye in a socially distanced manner, if that's possible. But again, out of our control, and yet another big uncertainty. We're aware of potential options, but at this stage we can't promise or guarantee anything. But believe me, it's really the one thing that has been the hardest thing to come to terms with during this pandemic, is the fact that our fans will not be able to come and watch a game as we understand it in the stadium for one last time, and that's obviously very, very, very upsetting for so many of us.
Yeah, and you know, what can you say to fans? Because we know from the conversations we all have on a match day, we know from the way that we feel about Griffin Park, and we know from the conversations we have amongst ourselves and with other fans, there is a lot of emotional investment in that ground. We talked in our first program about the fact that you know, some people have either officially or unofficially had a few ashes sprinkled on the ground. There are seats in that stadium that people have sat with their mums and dads and people who are no longer with us. This isn't just a building. This is something that goes back generations, with a huge emotional history for individual fans. That, you know, it's not just a case of locking the doors and handing over the keys. There has to be some way of a fitting farewell to celebrate our history, but also to celebrate the individual fans' history and to pay their respects to people who are no longer with them.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. But if there are no gatherings allowed, then that's not going to be possible. So we are in the hands of the government. When the government give us the green light to allow people to congregate, then that's something we can use to try and give fans the opportunity to say goodbye to Griffin Park. It is a much loved stadium. There isn't one director of a football club in the EFL who doesn't love coming to Griffin Park, and they will also be, you know, really upset to say goodbye, and obviously they won't be coming back again after this season, and a lot of them made sure that they were, as many of them as possible, could get into the boardroom to say goodbye whenever we were playing various teams. And it's so loved by everybody. But we're in the hands of the government at this stage. And as I said, I just promise you, we'll do whatever we can to give fans an opportunity to say goodbye, if at all possible. I promise you that. I'm
going to let you go soon, Cliff, because you've been very generous with your time, and I do appreciate it. And I'm delighted you were able to join us. I'm just going to give Marcus, Mick, and Mark a final chance to bring in any questions that you may have. So, gentlemen, any final questions or thoughts for Cliff before we ask him the most important thing in the immediate term, which is his thoughts for the game tomorrow? Mick, let's start with you.
Oh, sorry.
Just a message for the fans, Cliff, from the chairman. You know, these are difficult times, and supporters are desperate to see the club and everything. So it's just a message from you. What do you want to say to the supporters about our club and them and our team?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody, all of our fans who have been so supportive during this difficult period, and the response we've had from fans with regard to the options with both the season ticket refunds and the match tickets has been fantastic. And anybody who needed a refund and asked for a refund, fully understand where you're coming from. These are incredibly difficult times, and so we still love you despite that. And everybody should know that we really appreciate the support that you've given to the players, to the club. I've spent a fair bit of time with other members of the board, ringing around fans, wishing them, seeing how they're doing, some of them wishing them happy birthdays, and the older fans seeing how they were doing during lockdown, those over 70 and over 80. And it was fantastic to listen to some of the stories of fans whose first game was 1946. I think the earliest game was somebody who went in 1938. Just magnificent to listen to those fans recount the stories from all those years ago. And we know that they mean a lot to us. They mean a lot to the club. And we think they're fantastic. And long may that continue. And let's just hope we can give them all something that we desperately want come the end of this season.
Marcus, over to you. Any final words for Cliff before we turn to tomorrow's game?
Just a quick prediction of tomorrow. What do you think, Cliff? How do you think we're going to do tomorrow?
Well, it's going to be a tough game. I know that. I've been to Reading quite a few times, and we don't always get the right result. But this is a different club. This is a different team. This is something, what I've seen in the first two games, something very special. And I suppose the question is, can we maintain the levels that we have seen in the last two matches? Because if we can, I have no doubt that we can win the game. But, you know, in football, for two letters, if is the biggest word. And I can't tell you how the guys are going to be tomorrow. But I can tell you is, if they're at the top of their game, then we'll win.
Score prediction?
Oh, 2-0 to us.
Mark, final thoughts from you for Cliff.
Yeah, Cliff, I just wanted to say something actually you were talking about. It was the phone calls that you were making, particularly the early stages of this pandemic, when there was incredible fear around and confusion. And a lot of our older fans would have been, very upset that they weren't seeing their grandchildren and fearful of what was happening to their children and, of course, their grandkids as well. And I know that a number of the older vulnerable fans did get the calls from you and the other directors. And how much fun was it getting involved in those conversations, as you've been talking about, when people are happy to so pleased to hear from you and happily talk about their memories and when they first started coming. I think it's a marvelous thing you've all done. And I know my dad was a recipient of it, and he was over the moon. He said it made his weekend, and I know other fans have felt exactly the same. not just for their parents, for themselves as well. But how much fun was that for you?
Well, for all of us actually, because we've talked about it at board meetings, and all of us, Stuart, Donald, Mike, and Monique, Nitty, and myself, we've all rung fans, and we've all absolutely loved it. It's been so rewarding, and when you hear a fans turn around to you and say, "Oh, you've made my day," that's very humbling, really humbling. And so it's something that we are going to continue moving forward, because it doesn't take a lot of time and effort, but it means a lot. And I feel very strongly that the connection with the fans is so important to the welfare of the club, and myself and the board will continue to make those phone calls and help create that feeling of togetherness. And if any of us can make somebody's day, frankly, it makes my day.
Yeah, can I just pick up on that, Cliff? Because in your other job with Smart Odds, I don't know where one job finishes and the other starts, but the betting game, especially at the highest level, is a sort of very emotional, data-driven, maths-driven thing. And yet, on the one hand, you're doing that day in, day out, and on the other hand, you're making phone calls to elderly fans, to vulnerable fans, and it couldn't be more of an emotional connection. Is it ever difficult to combine those two, to sort of switch your head, if you like, from your Smart Odds head to your Brentford FC and your fans' head when you pick up the phone or FaceTime somebody?
So it's a good question, Stuart. I would answer that by saying that my role at Smart Odds is that of Chief Financial Officer. So my job is to look after the finances, and the really smart guys are the ones that are doing the statistical modelling and the software development, and so my role is very different. So I don't see myself as one of those really super bright guys who are building models and updating models and looking at ways to improve them. I'm much more of the human side of business. It's stood me in very good stead in my 29 years in my previous job, and coming up to 10 years at Smart Odds in November, it seems to be doing pretty good for them as well. So I'm happy with where I am and what I'm doing right now.
Cliff, it's been a real pleasure for joining. I'm so glad that we were able to overcome those initial technical difficulties and have you with us. It's been fascinating to talk to you. I hope we get the chance to talk to you again. And you've it's on the record now that you'll be wearing your black shirt tomorrow. And I know that Mick and Mark will be there in the stands, although many of us can't be. We'll be watching on iFollow, but we will look out for the photo of that, and I have no doubt we will be watching you clapping again at the Majeski Stadium tomorrow evening after another Brentford win. Cliff, thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it, and I wish everybody well, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of the season.
Thanks,
Cliff Crown, thank you very much, gentlemen. We will let Cliff go, and we will remove him from the stream there in a moment. But there he goes. Mick, Mark, Marcus, final thoughts on anything that Cliff has had to say before we turn to thoughts, closing thoughts about tomorrow night's game. Mick, we'll start with you.
Oh, sorry,
Marcus. We'll start with you. Go on, Marcus.
Sure. I just think it's quite refreshing to hear the words from the chairman. And how the club it's operating, and the togetherness, the inclusion of the fans as well, the special phone calls and those sort of things. We've got a special club and a special moment in our history as well. So yeah, I'm just so pleased that the club is situated how it is. It's in very good hands, and I'm just glad that we're at this club at this present time.
And gentlemen, you've all. Oh, somebody's got a news alert. Something's bad.
Not me.
Obviously, the BBC have just picked up on Cliff Crown's comments there and have sent out. Mark, you've got a long history with this club, as the three of you have. It does feel this. I sense, even though my memory, my collective memory, doesn't go back as far as yours, that we are on the verge of something pretty special here. This is a special moment in our history. It would have been a special moment anyway, but as we talked about in our first program, the fact that we've been through such adversity in recent months means that when the story of this season is finally written, it's going to be even more historic as a result of what we've been through. Although maybe the ending in terms of Farewell Griffin Park won't be what we'd hoped for.
No, of course it's wretched bad luck. Firstly, having a pandemic is awful for everybody in the world, because it has been worldwide. On a football terms, it's just dreadful that it's Griffin Park's last year and we don't have the chance for the fans to say goodbye at the moment. As Cliff Crown has said, it's too early to tell and think things may change, but it would be, I guess, a romantic consolation in some way if we were to get promoted. I did have I was fortunately invited to, I remember an opening night at the Academy some years ago, and it was the first time I'd spoken to Cliff, and he said to me his dream would be Brentford to get promotion the year they're moving into the new stadium, and that really would be quite something if that was to come true. And we are in a very strong position. There won't be any fans who aren't thinking about it, as much as we want to keep our feet on the ground, and we will do, and all the cliches of taking it a game at a time. But there's hope there, and the hope is what takes you in. It's what sucks you in. It can occupy your thoughts during the day. We could be doing. We're all doing other jobs. We've all got different things. We're all with our families. Maybe they're engaged in football. They're not. But I reckon Brentford fans at the moment, a good 30% of their day is taken up thinking about Brentford, if not more.
Well, it's the hope that keeps us going, but let's hope it's not the hope that kills us. And on the evidence of the first two games, there is nothing to suggest that it will be this season. But let's keep our feet on the ground. And Mick, thoughts from you on what Cliff had to say there?
Well, I just think it's lovely to see a chairman of a football club come on a show like this to share his time with the supporters. To be honest, I mean, there was a lot of honesty there. Cliff has given some snippets there that by September, if everything goes well and there's no second spike, that there's possibility of percentage of fans. That's a really good soundbite from tonight. That gives supporters hope, as Mark is saying. And then you look at it, we've got Marcus on here tonight, an ex-player. So, telling us that this is a really special, unique club. They're not sound bites. These are, this is the real heartbeat of what we do and how we do it. And I think the biggest thing for me is, so I often say to Mark when we're on these away journeys, is this as good as it'll ever get? Is this the kind of pinnacle of where Brentford is, and then it will going to fall away? But you actually feel that what we've built over the last 7 seasons, it's just getting progressively better. It's just got a formulation. Most football clubs you talk to in the Championship, supporters say there is no plan. The board have no idea. Nobody knows what they're doing. They bring in a new manager and it all starts again. Brentford just gets actually strategically stronger each season. And we've been building towards this moment to get into the Premier League. And what's happening is that you just get the feeling that this is just the very best of times, but it's just beginning. This isn't a completion. This isn't the end of a chapter. This is about a chapter to get into the Premier League. And you just feel there's just a good feel about the club. Everything that we do, the transfer, the new stadium, how we look after the supporters, we're all in it together. And that is a kind of uniqueness that, a lot of the Championship are looking at us with envy.
Before we look ahead and wrap up with our thoughts about tomorrow's game, a question for you, Marcus, from Keith. How's the dog? If you were watching episode 2, you will remember that Marcus's dog had a little unfortunate accident while we were on air, for which he was, as we said at the time, sent to the doghouse. How's the dog now, Marcus? Has he Has his tummy settled down now?
I'd hope so. Yeah, he's all right. I was going to ask that, Keith, how's the spag bowl if you're having it tonight? He got put off last week. Well, the dog's fine. The dog's fine. Thanks for asking.
Dog's fine, and no dinner spoiling incidents to speak of this evening, thankfully. So we'll go around for one final round of comments. If we are going to get to the promised land that we've been talking about for over an hour now, it all starts tomorrow at the unusual hour of 6 p.m. Don't forget. I probably would have if I hadn't noticed. So your thoughts for tomorrow, starting with you, Marcus.
More of the same. Got to start the same fashion. Go out all guns blazing. Show a bit of patience, a bit of resilience at times. Weather the storm, and let our supreme fitness take control of the game towards the end. The decisions by the managers when to bring people on and stuff has been vital from that bench. So I'm looking for another close win. I'm looking at a 1-0.
1-0 from Marcus. Mick, your thoughts for tomorrow?
Momentum. It's just build the momentum, Stuart. And that's the thing, is that we seem to be smart in the way we play. We tactically are very astute. We have high levels of fitness. We've seen it in both games that we finished the game strongly. So it's let Reading have the ball where they're not going to hurt us. And then we just hurt Reading with the pace. And we have I repeat again, we could win games in clusters and we could score goals in clusters. And so we don't have to play at 100% for 96 minutes tomorrow. If we play at 100% for 15 minutes, we take the game and we take Reading down tomorrow.
And Mark, your thoughts?
Well, we haven't conceded for 315 minutes. So the confidence is there at the back that... we will do our job defensively again, and we have the strike force to win games. We have got that power. I think it'll be interesting how the midfield plays tomorrow. Obviously, we don't know selection, don't know how that will pan out. But they've got some decent players. Do not underestimate Reading. They were very unfortunate against Derby at the weekend. I'm delighted Miag's not playing because I thought he was excellent last year. He's on loan from Chelsea, so he's bound to be a quality player. But they've got players who can hurt you. But I'm expecting our strike force to make sure that they score at least a couple. So it could be 2-1, 2-0. But as long as Brentford get the points, then we've got some more pressure on West Bromwich Albion, which is what it's all about.
And just remind us, the first two games we've been able to watch on Sky. The next game is going to be an iFollow game. So Mick and Mark, you're going to be there leading the commentary team tomorrow. Mark, just talk us through, for those of us who will be tuning in tomorrow, just give us the logistics of how we can watch and listen to the game tomorrow night.
Well, it's you can get background audio from about 70 minutes before kickoff. I would recommend you log in as early as you can. I don't want to put a fear in anybody, but there were some issues. We didn't have it in our first game because, of course, we were on Sky, so we didn't have the system overloaded. But some clubs, Reading being one of them, did have problems with their games. But the best thing is to try and log in early, and you will hear Mick and I start at around 5:45. And we'll have a little comfort break at half time, and we'll hopefully take you through the game. But the majority of you will be able to see what's happening in the pictures, and we'll just try and add some colour. It will be an audio style commentary because not everybody will be getting the pictures, but we'll try not to overdo it. And we just want to tell you we will be a little bit biased. We will be, obviously, it'll be very much a Brentford service. And we feel very grateful with it, and we will try and be your fans there for the evening, and let's hope the boys put in another superb performance and bring the points home.
And it wouldn't be I follow Brentford if it wasn't a little bit biased. That's why we tune in. So thank you for watching tonight. For your questions and your comments, you can continue the conversation on the Bees Bulletin Facebook page. I'll be opening up a chat thread there shortly where you can continue talking about everything that we've been discussing tonight, whether it's the game ahead, whether it's what Cliff Crown had to say, or whether it's your thoughts for the rest of the season. So do continue the conversation there. It just remains for me to say thanks to my guests this evening, Mick Cabble, Marcus Gale, Mark Burridge, and most of all to Cliff Crown. We go again tomorrow at 6 p.m. against Reading. Thanks for joining us this evening on Bees Bulletin Live. Thanks for all your comments and questions, and we'll see you again very soon.